I'm very sure this is the view from Israel. I'm recording this today in advance of an anticipated Israeli response to two separate ballistic missile attacks from Iran. And the anticipation, it brings a lot of people into trying to understand the relationship between Israel and Iran. And to help me with this, I'm invited a special guest, Namdar Yazdi. Namdar, welcome to The View from Israel.
Thank you very much, Barry. Thank you very much for your invitation, and I'm delighted to be with you and your viewers. Thank you.
Namdar is a researcher and university lecturer based in the United Kingdom. He's also an Iranian in exile, an Iranian and human rights activist, and is very much involved and concerned about what is happening to his country, or what has happened to his country, and what may happen in the future. And with your permission, Namdar, what I'd like to do is surprise our viewers by taking us back from today over 2,000 years. And I'm intrigued with the background to your picture over there. So explain to our viewers what we're looking at.
Okay. Well, I'm sure, thank you very much for introduction, Barry. And as I mentioned earlier, my full name is Namdar Bahai Yazdi, which shows where I come from in Iran. My family come from city of Yazd. The background that you see here in the picture behind me is the Cyrus cylinder or Cyrus decree. This is a sort of clay cylinder which is kept at the British Museum here in London, which was discovered more than 120, 30 years ago, in where it used to be Babylon. It used to be in Iraq today, which in those days was part of the Persian Empire. And this is the decree that Cyrus wrote at the time of the freedom of Jews from Babylon. When Cyrus conquered and he went and opened the doors of Babylon if I'm not wrong, in 539 BCE, and freed the Jews who were in exile in Babylon by the Babylonian kings. So this is essentially written at that time, and we have some good translations of these cuneiform writings that a lot of people regard this clay cylinder as a first sort of human rights, first degree of human rights in human history, essentially. That's where Cyrus the Great Persian king, Achaemenid king, talks about freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and a lot of other human values that we are not even today, unfortunately, familiar with. So that is essentially what it is, but I can expand on that later if you want.
Yes, and you've touched on something that I speak about a lot. And actually, what we're talking about here, what we're approaching, is something which actually exposes the lie that is going around the West in the contemporary world, even academia. And I speak to you as a university lecturer, where the perceived truth is that what's going on in the world today is the fault of the Jews in Israel because we're occupying Palestinian land, when in fact we're now talking about the Babylonians who came out of what is today's Iraq and conquered Israel and took the Jews of Israel into slavery. And this is, as you said, in the year 500 and before that 529
86.
18 before that time. And people don't know this because, okay, people sort of loosely know something about a history that the Jews were held as slaves in Egypt, or the Romans came and conquered Israel and took the Jews in slavery back to Rome. And anybody who goes to the Arch of Titus, the Colosseum, can see how they celebrated the Jews in exile over there. But actually, we're talking about the exile of the Jews from the land of the Jews in Israel, even before the Egyptians and before the Romans. So the history, the demographics, the DNA of the Jewish people go back to before 500 BC, and where we were, as we know the phrase of, for instance, people remember or think of the phrase of, we lay down crying by the rivers of Babylon as we remembered Zion. And Namdar, people think this was a Negro spiritual by slaves, African slaves on American plantations. But actually, they stole it from the Jews who were crying by the waters of Babylon to return to their home in Zion. Where does the word Zionist come from?
Yes,
Maybe
yes.
it comes from before 539 BC.
Absolutely.
And we were crying by the waters of Babylon to somebody to come and save us.
Right.
And along came a king called Cyrus.
Yeah, that's right. If I may say, the Jews had been exiled to Babylon following the destruction of the first temple in Jerusalem by King Nebuchadnezzar II in 586 BCE. And the Jews were forced to live in Babylon for nearly 50 years. That's a long time, it's not a short period of time. And when Cyrus' conquest of Babylon happened in 539 BCE, then that ended the period of exile. Following that, Cyrus wrote that decree, and you have very good evidence of that in the Old Testament, obviously, according to the book of Ezra. In the Hebrew Bible, Cyrus issued a decree, which, that picture behind me again, which allowing the Jews to return to their homeland, Judea, and rebuild their temple in Jerusalem. This decree is seen as an act of benevolence, making Cyrus a unique figure in Jewish history for respecting the religious freedom and traditions of the Jewish people. And that's how, by freeing the Jews at that time, interestingly, a lot of those Jews also came to Iran, to Persia of those days, to the Persian Empire. And we do have very good evidence, again, historical evidence, that some of the old cities of Iran, like Isfahan, for example, and places like that, were populated by Jews who came out of Babylon. One of the famous prophets of Jewish faith, Daniel, or as we call him, Daniel in Persian, Daniel, is buried in Iran, actually, is buried in Shush. And he was one of the ones who was freed, who came out of Babylon and came to Iran in those days. Anyway, so it is of great importance, I think, this thing, and it is a part of the history which is not discussed really in good detail. Obviously, after the freedom of Jews from Babylon, they went back to Jerusalem, and Cyrus helped them to build the second temple, essentially. And, then, the rest of the history. Obviously, this second temple was also later on destroyed at 70 CE by the Roman Empire. So, it's a part of the history which is not well uh, showed in the history books probably, or talked about.
I want to add one thing. You mentioned Ezra, the book of Ezra, but actually also in the book of Ezra, I have to tell you that not only did Cyrus rescue the Jews from slavery and return them to the Jewish land of Israel and to Jerusalem, but he actually also assisted by bringing the Jewish holy emblems that had been taken by the Babylonians to Mesopotamia and were in the temples of the Babylonians. And it was Cyrus who took these emblems, these important Jewish emblems, and shipped them back to the land of Israel and to Jerusalem. So he wasn't just saving the Jews, but he was also saving the important relics and emblems that were important to the Jewish faith at that time. And the second thing is that people should know that there's another book of Isaiah where in fact
yes,
the Jews and God says thanks to King Cyrus virtually for setting the people free.
Yes.
And God emphasized and praised Cyrus in some other words, calling him both the shepherd and the anointed. And so for the God of Israel to say to the king of Persia at that time that he would be called a savior and a shepherd of the Jewish people is, I think, a compliment that I don't know anywhere in the Bible that applies to any other non-Jew throughout the whole history or the literature of Judaism.
Absolutely. I think the significance of that in Jewish tradition is that, as you well said, Cyrus is referred to as God's anointed or Messiah, actually, the Messiah that, in book of Isaiah, 45:1, I think. And the significance is that, as you said, an outsider, a non-Jewish king, plays a pivotal role in the divine plan for the Jewish people. And he's seen as a tool of divine will, actually, who came and did this, and further legitimizing his importance in Jewish thought, I think. I didn't know that myself until really some years ago, when I found out that how important he is. And this is where Barry brings, I think, the Iranian people, the Persian people, closer and closer to the Jewish people. As you know, we do have a sizable, not very large, but a sizable Jewish community in Iran, and they were very thriving before the Islamic Revolution of 1979. And they were happily living in Iran. We had some of the best businessmen and businesswomen amongst our Jewish community. And I can say this for sure, that one of the first Jewish communities outside of the land of Israel that was formed in the Middle East was in Iran, actually. And that's how far back it goes. We always make this joke with our Iranian Jewish friends that you are more Iranian than us. My ancestors came to Iran, I don't know, 800, 900 years ago. Your ancestors came to Iran 2,500 years ago. And that is the difference. And that's how it brings these two nations together, I say, and these two people together. Yes.
Before we bring the relevance of this to our modern day, today, 2024, let's go back to Cyrus. And my impression is that he was influenced by the religion of his gods, but there's also an emerging thought that he was influenced by an emerging Zoroastrianism. Can you explain Cyrus and his elements and what the connection with Cyrus and Zoroastrianism?
Yes, that's right. Well, Iranians, Persians started by practices of Mithraism. Mithraism was even more ancient than Zoroastrianism. But when Zoroaster came and he brought a very simple message to the world. Actually, he wasn't really in the true meaning of Abrahamic prophet. He wasn't that kind of prophet that divine things were revealed to him and he brought it. He just said three things: good deeds, good words, and good thoughts. That was the basis of Zoroastrianism, and that's how he brought it. Obviously, there are no historical or archaeological, let's say, relics or anything to show that Cyrus himself was a Zoroastrian, but certainly at the time of Cyrus, Zoroastrianism was being practiced in Iran, and a lot of Iranians, Persians, were of Zoroastrian faith, essentially. And that, I'm pretty sure, influenced his thoughts and the way that he really impacted the whole world in those days. I mean, things that he did at that time in terms of tolerance and multiculturalism, let's say, that we call it today, was unimaginable 2,500 years ago, when the world was a different place. People were fighting each other, big battles were going on and things like that. Somebody comes out and brings this message to the world, was amazing. And Zoroastrianism throughout history has been like that. I mean, the big population of Zoroastrians live in India now. Obviously, the Parsis in India are of Zoroastrian faith, but we still have some Zoroastrian living in Iran. A lot of them, obviously, again, at the onset of Islamic Republic, left Iran and went to other countries. We have a big population in United States and other countries, but they also live in Iran, especially in my hometown of Yazd, which is uh, really one of the biggest fire temple of Zoroastrian is there in Iran, and some other cities, Kerman and other places, they do have that. But it's a very fine and I can say divine sort of religion. I don't like to call it religion as such. It's a philosophy. It influenced a lot of people, influenced great thinkers of history like Friedrich Nietzsche and Hegel, and these people were influenced by his things. Even big musicians like Mozart, when he wrote his Magic Flute, he talks about Zoroaster. When you look at the works of arts, in the history, you will see pictures of Zoroaster everywhere. So there is a good degree of that which goes on, and although we don't see any historical evidence as such that the Cyrus himself was Zoroaster or was not, but certainly influenced by the teachings and by the philosophy of Zoroastrianism.
While we're talking about religions in Iran, I'm reminded that the most beautiful feature of the city of Haifa here in Israel is the Bahai Temple and Gardens. And the
Right.
Bahai was a religion in Iran. Tell us something about the Bahai faith and why it is that they had the need that they have a center here in Israel, which Israel gave them, let them to receive it, and it's become, as I said, the most beautiful feature of Haifa, the Bahai
That's
Temple.
true. That's true. That's true. Yes, yes. I've seen the pictures of it. Unfortunately, I've never visited Israel. I hope in good time I come and visit these historical sites and these beautiful sites in Israel. But I do have a lot of Bahai friends, Iranian Bahai friends here in UK, and we had in Iran as well. As you know, Baha'is are in a way sort of derived from the Islamic faith, essentially. But they made a very kind of pure and clean kind of religion and practices that they have. And they were obviously at the time of the Qajar dynasty, before Pahlavis in Iran, they were prosecuted very heavily, and a lot of them were killed. That's when a lot of them started fleeing from Iran in those days, and their leader, their prophets were also prosecuted. And Baha'u'llah, who's buried in Israel, actually eventually ended up in Akka and in Israel. And that's why a lot of concentration of Baha'is you see today in Israel, in Haifa, because of those beautiful gardens there. So, but again, at the time of the Pahlavis, Reza Shah the Great and Muhammad Reza Shah Aryamer, uh, they had relatively a very good and prosperous life in Iran. Again, a lot of Baha'is started having good businesses. They were not getting heavily involved in politics, really, because that was against their religion in a way. But they were involved in all aspects of life, and they really had a good run, I can say, during the sort of 50 years of the Pahlavi dynasty in Iran. But unfortunately, again, at the time of the Islamic Revolution and after that Islamic Republic forming in Iran, they were very badly prosecuted. And because of this link that they had with Israel, they were branded Israeli spies, Israeli this, Israeli that, and it was pretty bad for them. That's why a lot of them left Iran for other countries of the world. But there are still some Baha'is living in Iran, unfortunately, under very difficult circumstances. They are not allowed to go to university. They had to form their own secret underground universities to teach their young people. So time is difficult for them. Time is difficult for them in Iran under the rule of Islamic Republic regime, unfortunately. But yes, as you said, they have this beautiful place in Haifa, and they are visiting that place in good time when there is peace and quiet. Hopefully, the Baha'is will come back to Haifa again and visit their holy places.
Well, we've gone, I think, from talking about what the Persian king did for the Jews 500 and so years BC, and it seems to me, Namdar, that we're about to see in 2024, 2025, the possibility that the Jews of Israel are going to reverse history, and hopefully, we all pray, to rescue the Iranians from the cultural barbarians in Tehran that have enslaved them.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. That is something that Iranian people are really, waiting for. It's been a very tough, difficult 45 years, Barry. I think I told you before, I lost my father as a medical doctor, as a member of parliament at the time of the Shah, and a lot of Iranian sort of a statesmen, politicians, army officers, army generals, were slaughtered actually at the onset of the Islamic Republic in Iran, unfortunately, and that has gone on for long, really. And you have seen it on we have seen it on our screens in the last few years, how young people, how brave young people of Iran have stood up to this regime, and they've had enough of it, really. They cannot tolerate these injustices anymore, and that's why I think gave you a story of my very good friend that I think you know him as well, Mr. Amir Taheri, the famous journalist, Iranian journalist who lives most of the time in Paris. And at the time of the COVID pandemic, he was stranded in Paris. He didn't have his medications, and he had to go to a big pharmacy in Paris to get some emergency supply. But the young people behind the counter wasn't giving him anything. So he asked to see the head of the, the manager of the pharmacy, and the manager came in and said, "Yes, sir. What would you like?" And he explained that. Immediately he asked, "Where are you from?" And Mr. Tahiri said, "Obviously, I'm Iranian." And he said, "Iranian? I will give you all the medications that you want. No problem at all. No prescription needed. I will supply you with everything you need." Mr. Tahiri got very surprised actually by this reply. And he said, "Why? Why, when I said I am Iranian, you did this?" He said, "Look, I am a Jewish person. I'm a French Jewish person living here. And don't forget, 2,500 years ago, your king, King Cyrus, helped us, got us out of slavery, out of Babylon. And this is the smallest thing that I can do for you as an Iranian here, just to repay my debt as a Jewish person to you." And Mr. Tahiri, always when even I say this as well, tears comes to my eyes, because this shows the true meaning of it. And Mr. Tahiri was saying that, can you believe it? From 2,500 years ago, person called Cyrus comes to my rescue in the middle of 21st century Paris to get me the medication that I need. So that shows how strong this bond and this sort of thing is. But really, in reality, Barry, at the moment, yes, Iranian people are counting seconds, counting minutes to see when they can be free of slavery as well, free of slavery that has gone on for too long, for the last 45 years. I'm a scientist, I am a researcher, I work in the field of environment, and I can see what has been done to the environment in Iran, apart from the cost to the people of Iran, cost to the economy, cost to everything. The environment of Iran is ruined, and we have really very little to say at the moment in the Middle East and in the world as a rich and prosperous nation, which we should have been. We should have been a very rich and prosperous nation, but you can see what sort of things we have come down to. Yes.
I could respond by a personal anecdote of my own, where I was in England a couple of years ago, 2, 3 years ago, and I was taking my son to a football game, and we went by a taxi, and we were talking to each other in Hebrew, and the driver said, "You from Israel?" And I thought, "Oh, we have a problem here." And we said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, God bless Israel, because we hope your country is going to rescue my people." And I said to him, "Are you from Iran?" And he said, "Exactly." We had a conversation about his story, his personal story of having to flee under the regime that you have right now. And he didn't want payment, but we forced it on him at the end of the day. But this is something that those of us that have had contact, Israelis, with Iranians in exile, there's a bond there. And this is something I want to explore with you in our next video, and I hope you'll be my guest very, very soon, so we can bring this story up to date. And I would want to hear from you what the Iranians have been suffering under the regime, and what needs to be done, and how we can help to support you.
Absolutely, sir. Yes, I would be delighted to do that. Yes, thank you very much.
And I'm appealing to you, viewers who are watching this, please share this video. Press the share button, press the like button. And if you want to hear and receive our next video, click the subscribe button. And this is Barry Shaw, The View from Israel.
I've got.